Hi, welcome to the KiCad Zones tutorial. Today we'll be covering the following topics shown here. And if you want to follow along, the section to look at in the KiCad documentation is section 10, creating copper zones. So let's move that out of the way. So firstly, say you want to create a ground plane for your PCB. Well, you click the Add Filled Zones button here, then you start making your zone. But there are some mistakes that you can make. So for example, this dialog comes up. Now if this dialog comes up, it means you've selected the wrong layer. So on the right, there's a list of layers here. And you need the layer to be set it to front copper or back copper, otherwise it'll pop up with the wrong dialog. I'll show what this dialog is used for later. So firstly, make sure you're set to front copper. The other mistake you can make will be shown after I enter this dialog. So I do this to make the zone. You see nothing's happened after I've connected it up, so you might think something's wrong. But what's actually wrong is that I've selected the wrong display mode. There are 3 display modes here. You want to select Show Filled Areas, so that's working. Okay, now let's go back to the dialog that popped up, which I didn't really cover. So once you click this button to add filled zones, and you click here, it'll bring up a dialog. And there's various options here, which will dictate what kind of filled zone you'll get. So the most important ones are here, whether you're on the front copper layer, the back copper layer, or other layers if you have a 4-layer or more layer board. So select which one you want, and then which net you want to connect to. So there's the 3v3 and 5-volt and ground on this board. So let's make the ground one. I don't know what these do. I don't know what that does. Here, clearance. So clearance is the... Sorry for that jump cut. Clearance sets the distance between the zone and everything else which is not the same net as that zone. Pause the video here if you need to look at the diagram. So if you want a greater distance, then you simply change this clearance value to bigger. So let's say you want 2 mils clearance on 2 millimeters clearance. You see, I've pressed OK in dialog and nothing happened. You need to manually tell KiCad to refill the area. So you can do that. The easiest way is to hit B. So I press B. What happened? I think I set the that too big. Let's try 1. Yeah, hit B. Okay, if it's too large, then KiCad wouldn't be able to connect to the ground. That's pretty interesting. I didn't have that happen before. Oh, okay, yeah, it can't reach the ground if you put it too big. So I shouldn't put it so large. Let's just leave it at 1 for now. Okay, so that's how you set the clearance. You can smooth the corners if you like. So fillet is like a round corner, let's say fillet. Set to 2 millimeters roundness, 5 millimeters, 10 millimeters. So each time I'm hitting B to regenerate the board. So now I'll show you another mistake you can make when you are putting multiple zones on top of each other. So now we want to make this 3v3 zone, and it's gonna go on top of the ground plane that we've already put down. Sorry for the ugly shape of it. Okay, so you see that that's definitely not right. The 3v3 should not be touching the ground. I can't even see what's going on. Okay, so that's 3v3. There's something wrong here. If you do a DRC check, it'll say copper area inside copper area a lot of times. So what KiCad has to differentiate 2 different zones in the same place is a zone priority level. So this option here. So the tooltip pretty much tells you what to do. You need a higher zone level, and that one will be preferred over the other zone. So now I've set the zone level to 1. So this inner zone is 1, this inner zone is 1, and this outer zone is level 0. So it'll prefer this inner one. It'll prioritize this inner one. And yeah, that seems to have worked. And likewise, if you want to have, say, another layer inside that layer, oops, you set this zone priority level to 2. Let's just delete that for now. There are 4 main methods for filling the copper plane. So it says default pad connections. So the first method, solid, just fills the entire copper plane and does not offer any thermal relief to the pads. The reason you'd want to have thermal relief, so I'll change to the thermal relief option and hit B to regenerate the ground plane, whatever plane, 3v3 plane, is that when you're soldering components, you may want to make it easier for you soldering. For example, if you have a soldering iron, if the entire pad is connected to the plane, then you'll need to put in a lot of heat and hold the soldering iron there for a long time just to solder that component in, or maybe it may be impossible if the pad is too large. So that's what the thermal reliefs are. In this case, we don't want to do that because we'll be heat sinking this component through this pad 4 here. So you want this to be completely connected. The other option is the THT thermal. So that just means that I'll hit B again to regenerate the ground plane. That means that Throughole have thermal reliefs, but then any other pads will not have thermal reliefs. So these surface mount pads wouldn't have thermal relief. The final option, none, I was a bit confused as to what that was for, because when I regenerated the plane, there's nothing there. I think that's if you want to manually specify how it will be connected. So if I put that there, then it will connect it because I've manually specified that there's a trace going from here to the plane. So likewise, I can put one there and that'll be connected and stuff like that. So I don't know when you'd use that, but that's the last option. Sometimes it's desirable to have certain pads have special properties. For example, considering this plane, we want all the pads to have thermal relief because they're not important for thermal transfer, except for this one, because this is the central heat sinking pad for the SOT223 package here. So if you just want to change the properties for one pad only, then you hit Edit, which is E, or right click, and then you go to the local clearance and settings tab here at the top, and then you set the copper zone's properties. So by default, it will inherit the properties from the parent footprint. Oh, okay. So you can set it for the whole footprint. Can you? Yeah, you can set it for the whole footprint. So you can say all of these pads will be solid. I hit B and they'll do that. So this is when I select the whole component, whole footprint. Or you can set it individually for pads. So let's change this one only. So we want solid because we want to transfer as much heat through here as possible, since this is a 3.3 volt regulator, linear regulator. One other confusing thing I found was when I was trying to put a plane on the bottom of this and try and connect it to 3v3. So let's try and do that. So let's make it the whole of the bottom. So first you select bottom copper to make sure it's bottom, and 3v3. This is again for thermal sinking. That. So you notice it didn't fill. Yeah, it didn't fill. So the reason it didn't fill is because there's no connection to the bottom. If we look at the 3D viewer, it's more obvious that there's no holes in the center area. There's holes on the side, but I haven't made the plane extend that far. So what you need to do is either add some vires or add some Throughole things. So to do that, let's do this. I'm not sure if this is the correct way to do it, but works. So you definitely need some sort of connection to the bottom. And once there is any sort of connection to the bottom, it will fill the bottom area. This really should not be... yeah. If you have different filled zones and they're too close together, sometimes KiCad's DRC will complain. So in this case, it kind of looks alright. There's nothing obviously touching each other. But if I go and click DRC, and I start DRC check, then there's all these zones which are too close to each other. Well, mainly the 5-volt and 3-volt zones. So to figure out which part is actually in error, you have to, I usually zoom in, then I click on the error. And you see it didn't actually navigate to the error. So in KiCad there's some, I don't know how it's done, but once you move your mouse out of the area, it will jump to the error. So yeah, I'll discuss that in a different video, all of the KiCad quirks. But anyway, the point is the error is somewhere around here. So it's easier to switch to the other mode where you can see the outline easier. Probably this part is too close, so let's drag that down. Let's remove this corner, it's not necessary. So that was right click, once you've selected the zone, and click remove corner, or create corner. Okay, let's zoom out again. On the DRC again. Oh, no. Still something wrong. Oh, okay, so that bit was too close to that bit. Now, sometimes there might also be an error just because, see how the zone is kind of extends past the point where the line should be. That's probably due to the corner smoothing. That can sometimes cause problems. So in a lot of my things, I just turn it off. Let's see if we can move it back a bit closer again. Oh, there's no problem. Okay, so the problem was that, not that they were too close, but because the smoothing was on, it caused the fill to kind of escape the region. So the last thing I wanted to touch on is that the part that I was using apparently has no pin 4. So 1, 2, 3. If you look at the here, you got 1, 2, 3, 4. So where's this pin 4? Well, in KiCad, sometimes the parts have hidden power pins. So there's a button here, show hidden pins. And you see all these parts suddenly have pins all over the place. So there's a pin 4 here, which is in the same place as pin 2, because on this part, you'd always have the pin 4 connected to the same thing as pin 2. Because if you check the datasheet, they're internally connected, pin 2 and pin 4. One thing that you absolutely must remember to do before exporting your board to Gerber format is to regenerate your regenerate all of the zones on the board by either pressing B or going to the DRC checker and press Start DRC. The reason for this is because KiCad does not do this automatically, and you can have things connected where they really shouldn't be. So let's put this 5-volt trace in a circle like this for no reason. Okay, well now we've done that. Now in this view, I mean that looks stupid, but it's not connected to anything else, right? Like it's not connected to the 3 volts or the 5 volts. But if you switch your view back to the field areas view, you see that it's actually connected to everything, and KiCad hasn't allocated space for it. So you need to press B first, or do the GRC check to correctly, so that KiCad correctly regenerates the planes. Okay, you can go all the way to this button, which is to export the Gerbers. Then you can put it somewhere. and you can plot, and then it'll plot your Gerbers and it won't ask you anything. So you have to remember to either press B to regenerate the region or run the DRC check. DRC check is probably better because it'll pick up any other problems that you have. One thing you might want to do is to merge two zones together to create a complicated shape. So let's do that with this 3v3. Let's make a triangle like that. Now if I press B, they don't actually fill together, and you see they're two separate ones. So what you do is you click the first one, select the second one, so now they're both selected. Finally right click and go to zones, and then press merge zones, and now they all become one zone automatically. So you hit B and it'll refill. One other thing you might want to do is have an area with no copper. For example, if you have something and you really want to have a low capacitance, then you might want to keep out copper nearby it. So to do that, you add a keep out area. Well, if you check the KiCad instructions, it says not to do this, but couldn't actually figure out any other way to do it. So add a keep out area and hit B, it is no copper. So you have to make sure that for the keep out area you have at least no copper pore enabled. You probably want the other ones not enabled because you want to put tracks and whatever through it.